why are customer journeys so important, and how is this going to affect sales in the next 10, 20 years?
Yeah, maybe I'll take the 10-year portion of that, just because in 20 years, hopefully we'll all be robots flying around in space cars. But so in terms of how this has changed over time, I think at least at the start of my career, CRM was this new thing. It could take a couple weeks to get an email out. It came from this like very creaky place, operating on very little insight, right?
Data.
Even with customers. And so the things that we know are so much greater now, which is wonderful, but we are still building up the ability and capability to use those to our advantage, right? And that's especially true when it comes to customers. I mean, I can't tell you how many companies I've walked into and I'll say, tell me, this is great, so glad to sit down with customer success or whoever that customer owner of the relationship holder is, and the first thing they say is, like, other than the logos, we don't know that much about our customers, right? So all of the data and insight that we apply to that sort of front of funnel customization and personalization can often end at the point that individual or account becomes a customer, right? And so a lot of what I see in terms of connecting customer marketing to the rest of the funnel is how do we continually bring that data and insight over and over to that customer experience as much as we're doing at the front of the funnel to make the sale, right? So I don't know if the audience is primarily SaaS businesses, but most of our money is made once that person becomes a customer. So it's super critical for us to continue that personalized experience beyond that initial point of sale.
Yeah.
So in terms of where I think this is going to go and grow over time is that, right now, for example, we're in the process of building out customer personas the same way that we have them for new business marketing, right? It's almost like we can reverse that same funnel to continue the commitment curve from that customer over time, right? So our initial touch point may look a lot like some of the touch points that we have with prospects for new business, right? But over time, we're asking for more and more commitment from that customer. Not from a monetary perspective, but from a relationship perspective, right? So we have customers that may be at the far end of that commitment curve that are speaking at conferences and helping us with thought leadership and, are on an advisory board and have a very deep relationship with the customer at that point. This is almost like a second sell that we're allowed to do once that person becomes a customer. Yeah, we still have that monetary relationship and they're using our software, but in addition to that, we can partner with them in a more significant way. So we have to figure out how to market and sell that piece.
That makes sense. And Chris, you head customer experience at AppTest, and can you talk a little bit about how shared experiences, this is something that's here to stay, this is going to transcend a lot of traditional marketing practices that we see today, even as SEO evolves, as content evolves, like how are these shared journeys kind of going to be, how are they going to evolve and why are they so important?
Thank you for asking that.
Yes.
So I think it's coming down to the evolution if we look, take a step back, not just from our industry point of view, but looking at the whole consumption of the market in the US in general. We're seeing shared experiences being shared verbally by friends, on Twitter, on Facebook, of that interaction they had with the brand.
Okay.
The product is not anything that we have to focus on as marketers. It's more about the experience, in my opinion. So I know some people are like Chris we talk about, right? But it really feels like if you have a good experience and it's followed through, it's not about just getting a cash sale or a touch point, but it's elongated, it's authentic. Those experiences will last through the test of time. Those people want shared and talked about. So I actually think we're moving to an economy that's more experience-based as opposed to this kind of transaction style that we've seen recently, but it's going to be long, especially with the millennial generation.
Mm-hmm.
It's, all had a great experience, and it's being shared.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll use a quick story is, you want to have kids in the audience, you ever get a chance to go to Legoland, yeah? Take your kids to Legoland. I don't believe they don't do it anymore, but they did a trial pilot study to where they couldn't control the outside environment of the experience. They could control the experience once they're in the park, right? They could do that. A family comes in the minivan, they get the kids out, the parents are exhausted, like, thank you, we saw you sitting in the traffic on the 405, right? Then you had a horrible experience, we saw traffic back there, like, yeah, thank you. But let's take the kids, get you guys out to the hamburger room or salon, whatever you guys want to do, or dinner, the kids over here and play. Whether or not they actually accept it or not, that they acknowledge that was a huge loyalty incentive for them. So they did it with a few families, and they saw high, longer-term rewards So I think Lego, as an example, they got that right, and so now they're starting to trial it out. Uber and Lyft are doing this behind the scenes. They're looking at preferred riders.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's stuff they're partnering with like Spotify or Pandora, whatever that playlist is for you. It's like, oh, if you had a good experience with that driver and they're in the area, they'll select a pool of drivers that you had a good experience with, good comments from that open feedback system. Like if they're available, we're going to have to start putting you with them.
Has this rolled out already?
They're testing it beta in certain markets right now.
But not San Francisco, because we're usually the last, right, to get it.
Yeah, like, oh. No,
Yeah.
I'm sure they are. I haven't said that, or I've read that actually, but I know they're
Expensive
testing.
customers they lose. Yeah,
So,
okay, that's really cool.
Did I answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
that's really interesting, and you work with a lot of different brands who do this, right?
Yeah, and so we do B2B, B2C, and I actually don't think it's anything about either one of those. It's P2P. I think it's now blending. It's person to person. Because the same experiences, whether we're sitting behind our brand industry or we're actually consumers. Coming across. It's transcendental.
That's great. And Todd, so how have today's audiences changed? We talked a little bit, I mean, we just mentioned, San Francisco, we're pretty critical. We do get a lot of different innovation out here, and people are pretty vocal about it. But in general, from a high level, how have today's audiences changed? What are we going to do about it?
Well, the internet ruined everything. What were they thinking? I think it really has. In some sense, it's changed us, right? I mean, we used to be more patient. We used to mail things to somebody. We used to, I do a lot in loyalty, and people were fine collecting points over for 15 years to finally get that watch that they only wanted. But the internet is really, and digital in general, has really made people a lot more patient. They can do a search, they get it right then and there. They didn't have to go to the library to encyclopedia. So same thing comes with brands and how they interact is customers want something right then, right there. Instant gratification, and we do a lot along those lines. Is we try and instantly gratify them when we do behaviors that we want them to do. But ultimately, as a brand, you need to actually realize that these people, if they're doing something for you, they in their minds think that they deserve it. I mean, you hear that whole millennial kind of attitude of, I do it, what's in it for me. I mean, it really is true across anything digital. You're seeing that people are doing behaviors and they're saying, okay, I just did that.
Can you give like a specific example, maybe like through an app or,
Can I use one from my world? Is
yeah,
that okay?
That's perfect.
We do a lot on social engagement, right? So in social engagement, if you don't, you got to really think about it. A few people said my whole thing is by now, so I apologize for repeating myself. But engagement is loyalty. I mean, it is now, you will see all these loyalty platforms are no longer just about purchase, but about engagement too. So we see that if people engage, you ask them, you say, hey, do this hashtag program with us. And you'll get a, low 1%, low percent, single-digit percentile of people doing it. But if you ask them to do that, and you say, if you do that, I'm going to reward you for that behavior instantly, we see a 50% engagement. So it's just, that's the kind of attitude you get now, is that people want to be rewarded, and they want for that behavior, so you see something back to them. And sometimes, and it doesn't always have to be money or things like that, it can be just some kind of content or access or privilege. Millennials and younger specifically want experiences. Give me an experience for doing that behavior.
Do you guys also agree with like the instant gratification? Have you guys also seen that?
Yeah, I wanted to say something back off what you said. A lot of people look at social media as a broadcasting platform or a publishing platform, and it's really not. It's an engagement platform. If you're using social media only to broadcast and publish what you want to say, you're kind of missing the whole point. Especially as a company, you need to be out there using that as a way to engage with your audience. That's your purpose of being on social media, is to be able to engage with the audience and make a connection with them, not just tell them what you think they want to hear.
Yeah, I'm on a panel later on social, but I do feel like a lot of companies see social as like a megaphone or a channel that they have to do because they're like, oh man, you're an archaic company because you don't have a social channel. But when you actually start to think about it, and you really have to see like, how does this tie into the customer journey? Where are they? At what point do you engage with them? Like, it's more of a conversation these days than ever, and I think people start to expect that. And when you don't have that, like, the expectations have all gotten higher too. So for good or for bad, like that's the way it is now.
What's interesting is I think, and I've sat on other panels in the past, this is the best marketer is your own customers, right? And so if they're out talking about you on social media, to engage with them and reward them for that. I mean,
Their advocacy.
Their advocacy. I mean, that's what we talk about influencer programs, but I don't know if y'all ever, I talk about this in my whole thing, but the little company called Social Toaster, they take their best social media people and they take them in and they say, hey, you're already talking about us, we're going to reward you for that. And then they give them tasks and they actually start doing those tasks. It's actually really quite interesting to see the results they get. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think another thing is that as customers create advocacy, you do, and social can be kind of transcendent in a moment. Like, you know, strategies like SEO can be used to solidify it in the existence of the internet. I know you're an expert in SEO. Can you talk a little bit about how SEO and content can be used within this process of the customer journey and engagement experiences to really refine it?
Yeah, a lot of that, at least from the SEO side of things, goes back to keyword research and using that as a means to get inside the user's head or the searcher's head. What are they looking for? And not just what are the words that they're looking for, but what's the intent behind the particular search. And there's a couple different elements of it. And one, every searcher is in a different phase of what we call the buying cycle. You know, they're either researching something, you know, they don't know what they want, they're just out there looking. Or they're buying, now they have an idea of what they want, and they're comparing options. And then they're shopping, where they know exactly what they want, now they're looking for the company in which to buy it from. And then the fourth phase is just not shopping at all, it's just information. And I want to know how to, or, you know, I just want to know what it's like to live on a yacht, so I want to research yachts. But when you do your keyword research, you've got to understand, what do the different keywords mean? What's the intent behind the search? Are they researching? Are they shopping? Are they buying? And then even beyond that, there's an element of understanding what the particular phrase, you know, what the searcher is looking for in a particular phrase. And one of the illustrations I use a lot in my presentations is I went into office supply store, Office Max, I guess it was, and I was looking for a cordless telephone headset. And didn't know where they were. I asked somebody, hey, can you show me where the cordless telephone headsets were? And they brought me around the store, and here they were. And yes, they were cordless telephone headsets, but that wasn't what I was looking for. They showed me headsets for cordless telephones rather than a cordless headset for a phone, which is what I was looking for. But it's a good illustration of trying to understand what people mean when they go to a search, and then trying to interpret that to make sure that you drop them on the page of your website that fits that particular intent. Whether it's, you know, adding a word or just changing the order of words, sometimes that can make a huge difference. And oh, do we land them on the home page? Do we land them on a product category page? Do we land them on an actual product or service page? All of that matters a great deal, because wherever they are in that buying cycle, if you put them on the wrong page, they're going to bounce. Because people don't look beyond the page, typically they don't look beyond the page that they landed on for what they were looking for. If they have to search beyond that, they're going to go back to Google. So you got to make sure on your website that they land on the page absolutely most relevant for where they are in that journey.
And how, I think that just also speaks to that the customer journey doesn't start, you know, as soon as a customer interacts with the brand. It starts way before that, when the customer is realizing they have a problem, they're starting to search for things, and the marketers that are able to capitalize earlier in the funnel often win, because they build loyalty, they build awareness, they have higher conversion rates. Especially if, let's say they landed on your page because you did a lot of SEO, and maybe they're not going to purchase right then and there, but they know that this is a resource in the future when they are going to go to it, and you've kind of done a lot of selling without even needing to actively be engaging them on a call or email or anything. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, well, and you want to be branding with them at every stage in that process, as much as you can. You know, even if they're just looking for how-to, well, that's where blogs come in handy, is sharing information that teaches people something. And every time they land on your blog because they do a search, there's a branding opportunity there. Now, they may not be a customer today or tomorrow or even a year from now, but at some point, if your information is continually being put in front of them, they will begin to think of you when they have that particular need. And if they land on your site early in the conversion process, there's a greater chance of getting them back to your site than just landing them at the end of the conversion process. Now, that end process, that buy phase, that's going to have the highest conversion rates. You know, and that's the low-hanging fruit, and you go after that because you're going to capture people and get them to convert. But if you can get them earlier, you're building a greater base of opportunity to convert those people into customers.
That's helpful. That's really actionable. And what about you guys? What are other tools that you guys like to use that you feel like maybe a lot of marketers or even people in the customer journey, trying to build customer journeys, what are tools that like people should be using, checking out, maybe some of like the newer ones?
I mean, I think that there's a lot of tools that are very customized at this point to communicating with your customer during the onboarding experience. And to me, that's a really critical, days, weeks, months, or even hours, depending on what kind of product you're working with. It's interesting that I feel like a lot of companies either don't see or sort of skip over that step. And again, it comes from this perception of, this sale that you make is like this click, where it's like everyone just sort of says, yes, and we're finished, great, on to the next one. And what you almost forget or lose is that you actually have to keep selling the customer.
The
because
engagement.
the actual
Yeah.
sale is them using the product, not them buying the product.
And like how much money in the value of like customer acquisition is there? It's like why go
Huge.
through the process of like getting a new user when they've already been sold? Like you've already done the work. Like just reap the benefits.
Exactly. So to me, that onboarding experience, there's probably no limit to how much attention that you can pay to that experience, right? Because at that point, they've made the purchase, energy's high, right? Everyone's super excited, and now they have to figure out, okay, how is this going to start to be a part of my daily, weekly, monthly habit, right? So this is behavior change, and this is the part that's really, really critical to making sure that you've got a customer for a long period of time and not a short period of time.
I've been with one of our clients is GSM, and the free-to-play game market is the most bizarre market I've ever seen in my entire life. They pay all this money, tons of money, and it's like between $2.50, $2 and $7 per download. And they'll pay people to go get them these downloads, and they don't know if they're ever going to make a single dollar. I think the stat is like after 3 days, if you download like a free-to-play game on your phone, 93% of people delete the game within 3 days. So they're just trying to make money off that 7%.
That little margin, yeah.
So how do you manage that? And I think that whole market's a big shift because they're realizing that user acquisition is really important, and that's all they've been focused on, but what about retention? And how do you keep people re-engaged? Because if you do that, they've statistically found that if they get people to go 10 times in a row, they're exponentially more likely to buy coins on a free-play game. So how do you do that? And I think that's really kind of what you're talking about, is how do we get them keep coming back enough that they get so used to it they're like, forever.
Yeah, the CAC and LTV is so important to know the numbers because then you have a budget to spend. Like I know with FanDuel, I'm sure you guys have all seen their TV commercials and their information everywhere, but it's, they know what the average user spends, so they're happy to shell out the money to get a user. And I think just from an analytical standpoint, that can be really powerful and really encouraging. It's hard to do something with nothing, but if you know that the average user converts at a certain rate and they bring in this amount of money, then suddenly you actually have legs to stand on. You have a case, and if you're in a company, you can advocate for, certain budgets and things like that.
Well, I think it's important to also realize that the conversion that you're looking for, that moment where you get the customer, that is not the end, that is the beginning
Yeah.
of that next process, and arguably the more important process of keeping the customer and continuing to build the relationship and earn income off them. And I would say probably the most effective tool out there for this is just customer service. You know, and we look for all these online tools, they give us this data to help us do this, but customer service, I mean, everything comes down to that. If you are good at customer service, people will figure that out. And they'll have loyalty to you for that. And that can start well before they are a customer, but it definitely needs to continue, you know, once they are, and that you're really going out of your way to build that customer experience.
And I would add to that, one other feature would be important is have a good product. I mean, focus on the product. I mean, yeah, if you have a good product, they probably gonna keep coming back.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, those two things together are really important.
Yeah.
I would further add, and I love that point you said, it's like, have you seen the movie Glengarry Rossi, like old from the 80s?
Yes.
Like, you have sales teams, it's very likely that they've seen it, and it's this point in the movie that says, I think it's Alec Baldwin or his dad, he comes in, and he's got these, like, I don't know, those old toys from the 80s and often those kind of metal chrome balls that kind of go up. And he says, always be closing, right?
Always be closing.
And it's not about that, it's about opening the relationship. And I was like, it's this mindset, like you said, like, oh, the relationship's not. No, it's when it starts.
Do you like cringe when you like watch this
Yes.
old school techniques?
Yeah, well, it's like still embedded in.
Give me leads.
Yeah. It's the sales
Good one.
mentality. So many offices here in the Bay Area have that mentality. It's like, no, it's be opening. Like, this is the
Yeah.
start of our journey or engagement. The nurture is the loyalty start.
Yeah.
And so one thing I'm really excited about what we just started at Avtex is we'll take a lot of the stuff you're talking about for SEO. We have with our clients, we mine all the recorded calls that they've had with call reps. And so if they had a good call or their promoter or the passive retractor, what's that key set of words? And we aggregate all the data and put that together and say, hey, how much is this customer worth? Where are they at in the pipeline? And then we can take that same set of words, that's the currency, that we then get back to marketing and sales that increases our conversion.
Can't you just put that into an AI to do the next call?
Yes, right. That's where it's going. Right? Yeah.
What are like other mistakes that people make, you think, when it comes to these kind of things? I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of like face palm moments.
I mean, you mentioned the cost of customer acquisition, and I think it's not that those things aren't important, but especially when you talk about customer marketing and the customer journey, every time I hear that stat come up, I just like cringe a little bit, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen people laser focused on the cost of acquiring a customer and you know, running on fumes once it comes to actually dealing with that customer that they spent so much money acquiring, right?
They didn't touch it
It's like,
out,
oh,
right?
well, you know, cost us, you know, and again, B2B, your cost can be really high. I mean, program costs alone can be thousands of dollars. So, you know, cost us $3,000 to acquire that customer, but, you know, we're out of gas on this one, so, you know, let's definitely not send them a gift basket or a thank you card.
Well, and that goes back to
Right.
that goes back to the GSN example. I mean, it's like there has to be a shift from like, okay, we're spending millions and millions of dollars trying to acquire these customers. Why don't you spend a lot less, put a lot more toward how do we keep them
Yeah.
and keep them engaged and things along those lines that have real value to them.
Well, I like that like churn has become like a really big metric that people actually care about now. I mean, it's actually become...
Churn's been around for a long time.
Well, it's been around for a long time.
They don't
but
care about it.
It's like a measure of success now when you actually, you know, have really good churn rates.
Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, I mean, cost of acquiring a customer could be lower because you don't have to acquire them as much as you have to keep them.
Well, and I would say also don't focus too much on going, well, if we do this, we're not going to be profitable. You know, if we spend too much, and call centers do this, oh, if you spend, you know, 5 minutes on a call rather than 4 minutes, we're going to lose money. And you get a sense that, oh, they're trying to rush me off the phone, they're not solving my problem because they got to be in that 4-minute zone or whatever it is. I'm just making crap up.
This is the making crap up part.
Yes, yeah. You know, but we can do that with every level of our business. Go, well, we've got to be able to do this. I've got to get this many hours out of my employees in order to, you know, crunch the numbers and be profitable. And sometimes when you're doing that, you lose sight of the customer, and the people working for you lose sight of what they're actually supposed to be doing, which is just making the customers happy. And you know, if you can move away from that, and we all got to be profitable, but if you can move away from being so minutely focused on it, then you might find that you will be profitable just because you've got more customers who are happy, spending more money, and bringing in new people from word of mouth.
The
Yeah.
money is a result of the behavior.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a story I can share. One of my former clients was Coach, and they were really interested. So like, you know, a few years back, they were doing really, really well as far as, you know, how customers perceive them. And internationally, in recent years, they've been doing really well. But in the States, like the target demographics that they were looking at, especially like women and 24 to 35, this like key demographic, they had just not been seeing the engagement rates that they were previously hoping for. And I think they made this big realization that it was like they weren't talking to them on the platforms that these people wanted to be talked to on, and they were really focused on sales, but along the way they had kind of like lost touch about like what it was that people cared about. And so we did this whole project with them about, you know, what is it, like what are the values of today's people, and like it was this, like most of the projects like I've worked on are very technical, very analytical projects, but this one was, it was really refreshing because, you know, they actually, someone in the organization understood the value of like the fluffy stuff, you know, the stuff that you can't necessarily put a concrete number on, but it was so important to making people happy and that it had actually affected their business. And so we did this huge project with them, and they found out a bunch of values that they maybe weren't targeting, a bunch of channels that they weren't engaging with, and like thinking about the customer journey there actually proved to be really, really helpful for them. Yeah, what are other examples? You guys have time. Might you work with Microsoft? Can you share any?
Yeah, so
Off record.
I think there's a certain trend that everything is, at least from my point of view of the world, is everything's customer experience.
Yeah.
There's a lot of whitewash, white labeling. Yes, Chris, we're customer experience focused. Like, oh, really? How? What's your strategy, roadmap? How do you tell me more? Well, we change our CSRs, now they're customer experience professionals. It's like, okay, what's the behavioral change though? What do you guys do differently?
Once there's acronyms, you
Yeah, and it's a
have
lot
changed.
I see a lot of this Me Too campaign stuff of our competitors doing this, so we're all that same strategy. But you want to be differentiated? Yeah, we will be. Okay, now tell me more. So it's a lot of, I see the way the businesses start, and you can see the trajectory of how they started and how they're still behaving. And so everyone says they're doing persona modeling or behavior mapping or journey mapping, but they're not taking into context of the empathy of where those pain points lie, those touch points, like what you're getting at with you guys as well, and how they're sharing that across. So I think a lot of pretty journey maps are created, design agencies put them up, and they look really nice, but it's not inciting behavioral change. And it's like, okay, well, we know all the insights, we can get insights all day long, but how are we doing to pivot around this? What's the governance models and so on? I see a lot of flavors of the week when CX projects start and die in the vine.
Well, let me ask you this, and this comes from a different perspective. How do you get companies to implement that? Like, how do you create buy-in for that? Is that something they just have to already have, or like, I'm sure that's a really big part of
Yeah, it's put in the
you guys all
cost,
do.
the cost to serve, how much does a customer churn rate look at, what's a promoter worth, attractive and passive, and then create that roadmap so it's not a shiny object just because of feedback you get that month or that.
So you still have to go back to the numbers.
Yeah, you have to go back to numbers and create a business case because I think a lot of executives think of customer experience as customer service with a bow on top.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's that perception, you're like, well, it's the whole ecosystem, the systems thinking at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. So it's created a business case, and from my experience, I have yet to have executives drive it. I have usually senior managers and directors who need to influence and change your organization. And they're the ones that create the business cases to go forward with and get behavioral and big governance problems and how they're assigning incentives on those promoters, attractions, and passives, and how they'll share that information across campus.
Who are like the biggest detractors in organizations from this space? You think, is it like a
CFO?
yeah? Budget's important.
Change, nobody wants change, right?
Yeah.
So
But people say they like change out here, especially.
Yeah. Probably better.
I don't know if anyone actually likes.
But you're an innovation. You
I
guys.
know, it's weird.
So that's why they hire you. They're
Yeah.
like, we can't do it
Yeah.
ourselves,
Yeah.
so we need to bring in other people who can innovate for us.
I mean, any behavior change is just going to be really challenging. Like, I would say at times people who are responsible for making customers successful can be the worst enemies of customer marketing. The traditional way of making customers successful is to talk to them a lot and hold their hand, right? And I think that that approach doesn't scale super well once you have hundreds of customers and thousands of customers and millions of customers, right? So many times you'll come into an organization and, you know, customer success or customer support or customer service or whatever you want to call it, it's kind of like doing this a little bit. Like, don't talk to my customers.
Yeah, they're putting the shield up.
And, you know, ultimately, everybody's on the same page about making those customers successful, but you may not necessarily be aligned on the tools and techniques and tactics you need to scale that, right? So just a simple idea of not treating every customer the same way, the way that you communicate that, or the way that a customer success leader might talk about that, that may sound to them like, you know, oh, you know, you're gonna tell me, like, you know, all my customers should be successful. That's not what we're saying. We're saying that your customers may want different things, see different things, and see us differently, and need different things based on how they're interacting with the product or how their teams are organized, right? You have to be, I think, reactive and receptive to that, and not just take the same sort of model of customer success and stamp it out across all of your customers. So, I mean, just in terms of how we look at our customer base, we have people that are at different points on that spectrum, and we have different personas that are aligned to those different types, and we give and get different things with those customers. It just depends on where they're at.
Yeah, I think, again, we no longer, the internet ruined everything, right? Social ruined everything. Because now, if you notice, it's that, I did some consulting for Fossil, Coach, so I don't know who's one there on that. Coach is a better product. What's interesting is they saw a shift. They had this huge, customer service thing, and et cetera, and then all of a sudden, this very small social media group, that does all their social media, started getting all they were the ones who were starting to react to customer service because people were posting things up saying, this is happening to me, and they were more posting as a negative, right? But they had an opportunity, right, to engage. So I think, I always say this, is that we companies, they like to think that, I do this, I reach out to customers this way on Twitter, I reach out to customer services this way, and I do, email this way, et cetera. But really, we have to really look at each individual consumer and how they want to interact with the brand as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah.
So we have to create messages in the way we engage with them and the way they want to engage on these various channels.
I have actually a lot more questions, but I wanted to give you guys a chance to get in and kind of ask more specific questions. Do you guys have any?
Yeah, I think the customer experience, a lot of what you guys have said makes a ton of sense. But at the end of the day, people end up on a team or in a role where they're metric on something that doesn't speak to like the macro level of customer experience. How do you rectify that? How do you work so that people are actually aligned with the metrics that they're working towards this bigger picture experience?
So I see a lot of that where it's metrics are driven, and then what ends up happening is they tie incentives to the metrics. So like NPS, for example, like, okay, you get NPS to rise, 5 or 10 points, you get a bonus for this quarter or whatever it be. And it quickly starts gaming the behavior. I think it's getting at what you guys are talking about. It's looking at the number as opposed to looking at the behavior. And then quickly, we got 65 NPS this quarter, thank you. You realize the emails like, hey, Mr. Customer, can you give us a 9 or 10? Like, oh, yeah,
Please.
yeah, please. And then you go to make a decision on it, and it's bad data. You're like, oh. So I quickly make sure that there's no incentives tied to those metrics, and I make sure that the customer lifetime value metric compensates all the 3 to 5 years of those behaviors in between. That's where I start.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think everyone on a marketing team has to be responsible for something like LTV, but within that, depending on what role you're in, there may be different things that you're measuring. So you may be measuring engagement in a particular channel. So we're all account-based, so we look at, how many interactions do we have with the customer account as a measure of engagement, for example. We have red, yellow, greens around things like support ticketing, service, and other things that we also look at. So we're working on building, I guess, what people would call sort of a customer health score. That would be a combination of different metrics like that we haven't quite gotten there.
That includes social, how they engage on social and things along those lines?
Potentially. I mean, in terms of our enterprise audience, they're not really heavy social users. A lot of the interaction, I guess I take that back, they are internally. but they're not looking to engage with us externally or engage with their audiences externally for the most part. So one of the things that we're looking at pretty closely that's just specific to our business is the spread of our platform inside of an organization and what our footprint looks like there. So for each company that may be different. I think one of the things that you've got to think about is like, all right, if ultimately I, want everything to ladder up to something like NPS and LTV or whatever that's going to be, what are the leading indicators that's telling me that I'm doing a good job or a bad job with this cohort of customers, right? So if there's a certain set of, say 50 customers that are the Gold Star, A+ people, their engagement score is going to need to look fundamentally different from the people that are less engaged, that we already know are less engaged, right? So there may be not just sort of one bar, but sort of multiple places where you need to set a standard.
Question: how much of the sales messaging and whatnot is person to person, kind of direct communication versus if I'm coming into the website and are you directing me as a company, or what should I be doing to direct my customers through a channel that's kind of that customer journey that's not personalized in the sense of P2P, but it's, I'm not talking to anybody, I'm doing anything, but as a company, is there a journey that you need to direct a customer through? Should be a call to action of some type on any web page, or get me to do the next thing?
I think every page needs to have a call to action. Every page needs to have a specific intent and goal.
Purpose.
Absolutely, purpose. What's the purpose of the page? What do you want the visitor to do next? Now, it's not linear because nobody's going to take this page to this page to this page. But there needs to be one primary goal, and then there needs to be some other options for them to explore the site. It's a choose your own adventure, so you've got to give them an adventure to choose from, but you have to give them something in order, hey, we want to get you through this process. This is the goal. So every page needs to have a very distinct purpose and goal that you're trying to offer the customer. Not force them through, but offer.
What are some tactical ways to measure, you mentioned NPS, but what are some tactical ways that you can measure whether you're improving or doing a good job on your customer journey?
So I'll use a combination of metrics. It depends for us and personally versus our clients. It depends. UCXI, it's a Forrester-based model, customer experience index, emotion, intent, like easy, effective. It could be net easy, how easy was the experience? Look up BT Technologies, they kind of develop that with their own in-house.
What is this framework called?
Net easy, how easy was it to do a task? They saw that strong correlation with their loyalty program. And then I encourage the metrics that are in-house, that are specific to your customer base. One company I like that we used recently is Infer. They use Bayesian kind of economics of assigning a number for each time they come to the funnel, or they visit the website, or they look at a webinar, what's that, the equation score, and then where they're at from the nurturing to that loyalty piece, and then you can start tailoring content for them to the right channel. Yeah, there's a bunch. I mean, customer sat as well. NPS, customer sat, you're splitting hairs at this point, right? Just pick one.
There are other engagement metrics too, I think, especially what you're talking about with gamification. Once you go into a platform, you can always see how sticky is your platform, what are bounce rates there, what are the conversion rates internally. Maybe it doesn't tie directly to a sales metric, but if you want your customers or your users to consistently be coming back and engaging, it is important to see how many pieces of content do they read, how long do they stay, how long do they click around, how long do they view this particular scroll channel. I think that those are things, and what is important that we haven't talked about really is those are all things that later inform the product roadmap. If you guys are at the stage where you're closely integrated, these are still really, really important things to be informing your development and engineering teams, because at the end of the day, having a good product is what makes people stay.
And you can have really happy customers that don't actually use your product. So for me, the metrics question is always going to be a balance between, what is the quantitative data telling me about whether or not this person is actually engaged with the product, versus the qualitative stuff of, all right, so on the roadmap for this customer, we would like to get 3 referrals from them this year. We would like them to attend our user conference. We would like them to, be a customer reference twice, or, whatever that sort of list of gets might be potentially from that customer. None of those things are possible without an understanding quantitatively of where they're at in terms of their journey with the product and the program, right? So it's, for us, it's a balance between those two things.
I think I'm gonna open this up and let everybody ask questions. I think one thing we could leave it on is, I'm gonna ask each of the panelists, what are topics that you guys can all come to them for? What are things that they can really speak well on? If you guys have certain questions or needs, or if you guys have certain needs that you would like to ask of the audience. So I can start, if you guys have any specific questions on early stage growth with startups, or if you are interested in, how do you tie content marketing into a lot of the work that you're doing, those are things that I'd be happy to help with and kind of talk about.
I have a question for
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys. I've been on a number of tech support calls in the last few weeks, and every one of them, I've just noticed every one of them is just oh, I understand you have this problem, reiterating the problem. Oh, I've had that same problem myself. I know it's very frustrating, just caking on the empathy. Now, I'm not an empathetic person. But does that crap work?
But you know what they're doing?
It drives me nuts.
You know what they're doing? Why they're saying that, they're trying to figure out the right answer to tell you. They're stalling. Yeah.
Well, a lot of this is over email. So they shouldn't be stalling.
The chat stuff?
Yeah, and so I find it very frustrating, especially when they don't really have an answer, and it's just, one person literally walked through a step-by-step process that had nothing to do with my problem. And I'm just really, we're doing this? But I guess I'm asking though, does that empathy type stuff work? I mean, I see right through it.
Is this with Comcast?
It was Apple, it was AT&T, I mean, several different ones, all doing the same thing. And I've never noticed it before, but I just does that resonate with people?
I think there's something to be said for creating goodwill with people, knowing that they're a human being on the other end. They're not a robot that has all the answers. I mean, I see a lot of people resonate with that, because at least it's really hard to scream at someone when you're oh, you have children.
Oh,
you have you low on empathy. So.
I see that some of my clients stop hiring call center reps with call center experience. They're now hiring people from suicide hotlines or hospice care
Interesting.
to get the empathetic approach, because they realize their product is really bad. So they need to be people that can handle the punches over the phone.
So they won't kill themselves.
It's not that they're going enough, but the point is they're putting more emphasis on the empathy for that reason. Exactly. So they're putting more emphasis on that as opposed to experience the call center. So that's what I'm saying.
Do you want us to keep answering your question?
Well, I think at some point we could, but
Do you want to answer? She asked what could someone come to you for?
Yeah, what is something that someone could come to you for help on, or ask you guys about?
Yeah, geeking out off customer experience, user experience, loyalty. That's live, breathe, and die on and stuff. Consumer psychology. That's really what I'm about. I'm actually curious though, not so much about our expertise. I just want to know, because when I talk to clients, very rarely do anyone I come in contact with, do they talk to their own customers. So I just how many of you guys that have customers actually have you a branch that talks to your customers frequently? 1, 2, 3.
Oh, wow. That's horrible. Guys!
No, it's not. It's it's funny because we do a lot of research. We buy the Gartner report, IBC, but then we go out and we have this perception we're actually not talking to customers.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why that is, but whatever, or our makeup is, we're just not doing it.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
From as a marketer who's been in the B2C to B2B space, as you talked about, I was in the gaming world in my previous experience on the freemium side. So our customers, the LTV was $1. So when you're talking about talking to them, it's a lot more different now. I'm on the enterprise side, and our customers are 100,000 per year. So I think that's one of the main challenges, like if you're on the B2B, B2C
Is it
side.
worth your time to be talking? to
It's,
them?
yeah, and it sounds terrible that way, but it's like trying to, you can do forums and stuff like that, but trying to do any type of one-on-one communication with over 1 million,
Well, I think
10
at
million,
least-
40 million.
Yeah, at least having like a survey at least helps. I think that there are even some companies that don't even have like feedback mechanisms.
Right.
It never even gets to the marketing team or the sales team or the product development team. Or it's so long that they're only getting feedback like every year or something like that, and it's just, that's really hard.
Yeah, it's delayed,
Yeah.
because you feel like it's like a year old.
Yeah, you don't know what part of the product they were referring to, you know, what experience, that person who was in support was probably already gone by now, but yeah.
I think that's a good question though, because even in that world where you may have millions of customers, I would argue that you would probably learn a ton from having 10-minute conversations with customers. There's stuff that's just really hard to capture from survey data or how somebody's using a product. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've looked at data about product usage and thought, I have no idea why so many people are doing that, and I'm never going to figure it out unless I compare it with some qualitative insight.
Should we continue with the?
I guess my main focus is around, I've done a lot of startups, if you have any questions on that. I know what not to do. Okay, I've learned a lot of that. And then I think I'm really strong on loyalty and psychology, and I mean, that's really, we've been really focused on using gamification to drive desired consumer behaviors at a higher level and amplify them.
Is there a particular type of company you like love to work with?
If they have money. Again, I think it's interesting. God, it's comedy on these panels. So I think everybody has a desire. If you're in business at all and you're talking to customers, you're trying to change their behavior, modify or create new behavior. We're all in that thing, and even if it's internal, training or whatever it might be, we're all trying to figure out how to do that. And I think there are interesting ways now. The more data we have, the more we can personalize those experiences. And I think that's really where it's all going. Our ability to really know that person and be able to, reward a behavior that they, with the way that they know that they want to. It's a really powerful thing.
Thank you. Stoney?
My company, we focus on building the web experience, having a marketing-focused website, whether you've got it built already or you are building a website, building it on that foundation that you can really engage and create a site that is great for your visitors.
Things to talk to you about. So I think B2B marketing, definitely happy to talk about that. Customer marketing, marketing tech, and ops.
I think we should all share one failure story, just for giggles. Wow.
You guys go first. I gotta look at which one. In the present business? Doesn't matter.
I've got one.
No, go ahead.
The camera still on? So I was, yeah, I know, I was like, so I was using the survey provider, Qualtrics, and we had a client, $1 million engagement, 6 months, excuse me, $1 million client, $1 million engagement. And it was a survey to a specific set of executives. And you know the tagline that comes from like Excel and Qualtrics? Dear first name, last name. I butchered that.
What do you mean?
I got all the executives' names wrong. It was like, I don't know how I made that mistake, but I did it. I had to take ownership for it. And I was like, here goes my career.
But you're here. You're doing jobs.
Not with the same company. It actually wasn't that bad. I was stressed out of it, but I had to fall on the sword gracefully, really. Explain what happened. They're actually very understanding of it, but my boss was like, come on, this rookie is not Bush League. I'm like, I'm sorry. It's because I was juggling so many different projects, but yeah.
That's a good one.
This just good advice for companies. If you're going to get investment, get with somebody who actually understands your business. I mean, that's probably the biggest mistake I made. It was a previous company, not this company, but I had a company that they just didn't understand my business, and they didn't understand how it ran and how it ramped up and all those kinds of things. And one of the worst things you can do is try to explain it to them, and they just don't care. They are more about the investment rather than caring about the business. So it's too serious. I'm sorry. It's serious. It's really good advice.
Actually, I'm going to tell a funny one. Bring it up. We were doing a pitch for a really large beverage company, and this beverage company would use their own language for everything, so they were already a customer, and so we were getting really hip with what we do. We thought, we were like, oh yeah, we totally got this. When you have a soda, it's a thirst occasion, like we're learning their language and we're going to speak their language to them, because that's what you do with customers. And so somewhere in our deck, we were showing a truck, but it was the truck from, like the main competitor to the beverage company. And they were not allowed to say the name of the competitor, and it was like just emblazoned on the side of the truck. And as soon as I saw the slide, I was like, nah. And we spent the rest of the meeting talking about the competitor, which shall not be named, right? Because they actually weren't even allowed to say the name of the competitor. They would look at it and they'd be like, yeah, that's a truck from the competitor. Competitor, da-da-da, okay.
I did that.
Totally took our meeting off track.
You know, like the icons that, like the black and white icons you guys can use in like power decks. Like Jawbone was one of my clients, and we were creating something, and we used a Fitbit icon thing for them because we just typed in like fitness tracker, and somebody just like pasted one in, and it wasn't until like the senior exec meeting where people were like, oh, that's not Jawbone. Yeah. It was horrible. It's okay. Any other questions? All good?
I have a question. Just kind of to the topic here about, I'm curious if maybe anybody in the room, if you've got examples of companies that are really doing it well, the consistent sales message and process, and are there standout companies that you look to say they're doing it well? Who can I copy, basically?
I think USAA for me.
Oh, yeah.
USA does a great job.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of companies are doing it well. I think what impresses me is when they can do it well and in a really, really personal way. So, I mean, things like, it's an older example, but like when Qantas used social media to figure out that, one of their first class travelers is going home to his kids, and they had like a teddy bear waiting for him. It's like it's these very sort of personal moments that companies can create for their customers that I think, like to me, it's like, that's great, how do we scale that, right? Just answering the phone and dealing with people's problems and, making sure they're happy customers and getting them to speak at conferences, that's great. But it's these like little personal things that I'm just really hoping we can get to a point with data where that sort of stuff can be happening at scale.
I think
That actually
Southwest.
happens now with Virgin.
Southwest does a good job.
Yeah.
They brought you teddy bear?
So actually Virgin, on my flight out here, actually, I did not get my upgrade, which I wanted to. And so I was sitting in the regular seat, and they went out of their way to bring my food first, and they actually brought me dessert for free. Actually, they all knew it all data-wise that I was on the plane sitting in 5A.
Did they know you were like lactose intolerant?
No.
That
But
would
they
be
literally,
great.
they knew by my seat
That's
that I was a gold member, and that they were going to make sure, even though I did not get that upgrade, they were going to make sure I felt really good.
I'm curious, like Southwest, I get a birthday card from Southwest, I love. I wish they
I
sent
think
a
it's
birthday-
just you.
No. You didn't? Do you guys get a birthday card?
I didn't get a birthday.
Oh.
I don't fly Southwest.
Where's my-
They're flying.
And I think that's brilliant, they actually do that, like,
Yeah.
if anything, like someone cares when like Southwest cares when they get a birthday card at Southwest, I'm like, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's something so simple, I mean,
Yeah. I think about it all the time.
They're
We have a lot of clients.
Yeah.
that
They do
like
a lot of really interesting
Yeah.
things. So.
The little touches from people, I think, are always really touching. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it, and we have some incredible panelists, so.